some excellent students too. Okay. Then we have Hindi class here. One of the Hindi teachers is actually a professional teacher in HEB school district. She teaches Hindi there. So we are one of the best teachers available here. We need to use them. Okay, they are willing to serve. So please use those opportunities. Sign up your kids if you want to learn if you want them to learn Hindi. We also have Kannada. Very unique to Saaket is that we have a Kannada class here. So if you are Kannada speaking or you would like your child to speak Kannada, enroll them. The teachers are very dedicated. They've been doing it for several years and they've had pretty good success with the students who have been attending. We also have Gita chanting. The Gita chanting that we do in the assembly here, 1 or 2 verses at a time. They'll be learning them memorized and they'll learn to chant them perfectly. That means they will know, even though they may not be able to read the script, they will know the difference between ka, kha, ga, gha, ta, tha, da, dha. So they will be able to pronounce the Sanskrit aksharams correctly. So encourage them to participate in that. If they do memorize everything and they learn all the verses, they get to participate in the Gita chanting competition held at the end of the year. And it's a competition, means it's not really to select the best kid or anything, it's just to encourage the kids to memorize and participate. So even if they don't really complete all the verses, they can still participate, but we encourage them to learn all of them. So encourage your child to do that. Now, the thing about Gita chanting competition, Gita chanting is that if your child is already attending Hindi and they can't attend Gita chanting, that's okay, you can teach them at home. You know, we have the recordings online, and so you just practice at home and still participate. And then we have Shlokathon. Shlokathon is a very unique program where the children get to learn verses of all the deities in our Hindu pantheon. And they, you know, when you go to the temple with the child is just looking around, wondering what's happening. They won't be doing that anymore. Once they end Shlokathon, they'll start off straight away. Ganesh, they will know. Shiva, they will know. You know, Krishna, they will know. So you are just equipping them to be not just idle visitors to temple, but actually active participants. So even Shlokathon, we have classes here, but you don't have to necessarily enroll in the classes. You can buy the book from the bookstore. The audio is online. You can practice at home, register for the program, and come for the test. And so the students, each time they graduate through one deity, they get a sticker. They buy a plaque and put the sticker on the plaque. And when the plaque is full, they get a huge trophy, often from, you know, visiting Swamijis. Sometimes we might have Swarupananji himself come here and give the trophy. So it's a pretty prestigious thing because it's a long haul. It's not like you learn a few verses and you are done. It's a full book. So it takes few years. The younger you are, the quicker you will finish, obviously, because less homework from school. But it's a good idea to go through it. Even if they don't complete it, they still benefit because they learn as much as they can. So I encourage you to look at that. Now, if you want to learn Shlokathon and Gita chanting, you can do that concurrently in attending the classes. You just split the 1 hour between the 2 classes, half hour each. And we can do that. So I talked about Swaranjali, and then we also have a dance program, not strictly a class, but occasionally we have opportunities like the banquet that's coming up. We have a very good dance teacher who choreographs programs for us, and we also have some chicks who are helping us teach the kids, and the chicks themselves dance along with the kids. So it's a very nice program where the children relate to the chicks much more easily than to older people. Encourage you to look at that. If your kids were already learning dancing outside, say, in training, learning dancing, they can just participate. They get a chance to go on stage, perform in front of a large audience. The banquet will have close to 500,000 people. So about 50 tables, 110 people each, so 500 people. So it's a very good opportunity for the kids to perform in front of everybody. So I encourage you to do that. Now let me talk about the banquet briefly. The banquet, we have all these various classes that I mentioned coming up on stage and performing. So there is a Swaranjali segment. For the banquet, we have opened it up to all the audience, not just the Swaranjali students. So any child who knows to sing and wants to participate can enroll. Okay, tomorrow is the last day, so enroll by tomorrow for Swaranjali. Dance, already the last date is over. We had a meeting yesterday, the class has started. Then we have Shlokathon and Gita chanting. So Shlokathon, if the child is in Shlokathon program or wants to join, can still join. And we have selected a particular stotram. They will be chanting that on the banquet day. For Gita chanting, if you had participated in Gita chanting last year, then you can participate in the banquet this year because the verses that will be chanted are from last year's chapter. So dance, music.
Shlokathon, dance, music.
Yeah, okay. Vadi Tarangini. Okay, I want to talk about Vadi Tarangini quickly because it's a very, very unique program. It's offered only in Saaket. You guys are so lucky. If your kids are in high school and they have already participating in band or orchestra in school and they're pretty good at their instrument, I encourage you to consider joining Vadi Tarangini. Vadi Tarangini is a program where they learn, it's an orchestra program, okay, it's only instrumental. But the beauty of it is they'll be playing Indian classical music using Western musical notes. We have an excellent teacher who can render all this Indian classical music in Western musical notes for each of those instruments. The students can just play it because they are used to reading music. So it's a very impressive thing that, to see the children perform Indian classical music without knowing anything about it. So it's very, and the children love it. Now, the other thing I want to say is all these classes help your children to form bonds. Okay, they form very good friendship because they are all doing something together. In Balavihar too, they form bonds, but they are not, having this much opportunity to do something together because it's the instructional pattern. They do interact, but not as much. So I would encourage you to use all these opportunities and sign up your kids. Okay, and tell all those parents who have gone to Starbucks or shopping who are not here also about this because they are missing out on this knowledge.
Thank you. All right, let's begin. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hari Om, everybody. Hari Om to everyone in Chitrakoot as well. You guys look so serious today. Ganesh Chaturthi Puja and everything, why so serious? Now we're smiling, okay. If I have to say you look serious and then we start smiling, that's good. I was scared for a second. Usually people are more cheerful. Everyone was looking serious today. Today we come to the final portion of the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. This is where the knowledge truly begins at this point. We start to see that when we apply this knowledge, that transformation begins. So today we'll go through Arjuna's first big question that really delves into this knowledge with the aid of a framework provided by Param Pujya Gurudev as well. So after the description of this highest reality, after being cajoled into fighting this war against his will, Arjuna now is in a position where he's asking, you talk, Bhagavan, about Buddhi Yukta, the person of sound intellect, of an integrated personality, which we'll talk about today. But then he has a question, that what is this person even like? Now, if I were to make a statement today, there is a billionaire in the room. If I say that, there's a billionaire in the room, how would you guess who it is? You'd be looking around instantly. Billionaire in our presence, wow. All right. Is it Hegdeji? Is it Paramji? Who knows? But then what are the markers then? What are you looking for to see, assessing are they a billionaire or not? What kind of car did they get out of when they came in here? What kind of watch are they wearing, probably? What else? The way they dress. How many people have come and said Hari Om to them today? That also matters a lot. In what way did they say Hari Om to them? Is it like, Hari Om, what's up from the back? Or you get up, Hari Om, how are you? Is there anything I can do for you? That's the way we talk to billionaires. We can get something from that maybe, right? There's no billionaire here today. I'm sorry to disappoint. But these are the markers we look for, obvious things we'd say that this is how they carry themselves. This is the, objects that they have around them. This is what they drive. That's what we look for. Arjuna is looking for the same thing here. That Bhagavan, you're saying that the person of wisdom has no desires, therefore has no fears in the world, no attachments, does not have anger at that moment, no delusion like you and I have. What does that person look like then? Sthita prajnasya ka bhasha. How does that person speak? They must speak differently from you and I. In words of anger, I curse at people 3-4 times a day, not more than that. Sundays, I don't do that. Other days of the week. Sunday's God's day. Can't use, abusive language that day. Then how does this wise person speak? Are they always monotone and just like this? Realization means no emotion at all, right? So, sthita prajnasya ka bhasha, how do they speak? Samadhisthasya. Samadhi, the person who is in that supreme state, where they are not subject to oscillations of the mind that I have. Where one day I feel happy, the next day, situation can be the same. Nothing major has changed, yet for some reason I can't explain why the udas kind of feeling comes up. Why that oscillation? Does this wise person have that even? Kimasita vrajeta kim. How does he sit? How do they walk? How do they conduct themselves amongst people? Are they always alone? How does it work? Because one common misconception is that, yes, Shruti talks about these people of wisdom who are realized. They must be in some cave in the Himalayas. They don't mingle with the people. Therefore, there's no realized people we can even point at. They all live somewhere remote. We all have thoughts like this about what that realized person is. Bhagavan Krishna goes through that in depth today. So, what is the first thing he says to answer this question? Rajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan. That person who does not have any desires anymore, that is the first qualification for realization. Then he is said to be of steady wisdom. What is the second part of it? Atmanyevatmana tushtaha. The one who is grounded in the self. No desires means I don't have this attachment with my equipment and what I am, what I think I am. My identity is something much higher. I have to abide in that. Now, this is where our framework for today comes into play. And this framework serves us throughout our study of Vedanta. One challenge that Pujya Gurudev had in the early days was, first, explaining this knowledge in English is incredibly difficult. Words like Atma, what is the English translation? What have you heard? Soul. That is an Abrahamic word, which is a different connotation, not a true translation. If you look in Tattva Bodha, the translation for Atma is actually 3 sentences long, with many different moving parts to it. English in one word does not capture that. Swarga Naraka. What do we call it in English? Not true though. Heaven and hell. Heaven is that eternal state where there is the Savior and then you're saved and you're there forever. Hell is eternal damnation. That is not our idea of our lokas though. That's not what it is. Shraddha. How do we translate? How do we translate that usually? Faith. Faith, if you look at the actual definition in religious context, again, is that blind surrender upon something, to a divine form, to a message, to the words of a prophet. In Sanatana Dharma, Shraddha is not blind. Unless it's supported by yukti, logic, unless it's supported by shruti, what the Shastra says, unless it's supported by anubhuti, personal experience, it does not check out as valid. So these words that we use in Sanatana Dharma, they have no word-per-word definition in English, and there are some amazing writers, namely organizations like Ramakrishna Mission, where since the late 1800s, they've translated our works into English. They did their best of translating it with the words, but unfortunately, because the paradigm is a Western paradigm, these have Abrahamic connotations. The result of that is we today as Hindus look at our religion with misconceptions because of these words that we use. So that was one challenge that Pujya Gurudev had to contend with. The other challenge being, this entire Vedic compendium of knowledge, telling me what my true identity is, he had to build some kind of simple framework with multiple applicabilities for us to understand. That's where this BMI chart comes from. At the very top, we have the Om right there. This entire chart has 11 components to it. Highest is that Om. That is my true identity, highest reality. That which is above all, that which is asanga, has no attachment to what I think I am. Below that, you have the letter V. V stands for vasanas. Colloquially, in Telugu, for example, in other languages, vasana means what? Smell. When you eat a meal with your hands the right way, nice Indian meal with your hands, you wash your hands, you use soap, you scrub away, like COVID type of scrubbing, right? That's how we used to wash our hands during that time. Does your hand still retain the smell of the food? For a little bit it does at least, right? That impression still lingers, even though you've tried to scrub away. Vasana means impression in Sanskritam. Whereas I've lived life after life, going through this cycle of birth and death and birth and death, the actions that I have done have created impressions on my subtle personality. In that subtle layer, likes and dislikes that I act upon, it makes me want to do more of it. That impression is what's created. And we see that daily with something as basic as food, for instance. So how many of you like eating at your mother-in-law's place? I'm on camera, you're not on camera. You can be honest with me here. No one raised their hand. No one likes eating at their mother-in-law's place? Oh my God, wow. Okay, some of them got scared. Your wives are probably here, aren't they? Oh, okay. So you eat at your mother-in-law's place. Son-in-law is treated like a king, right? Like prince. When you go back to your mother-in-law's place, especially in the early days, if you're the oldest son-in-law, that's one thing. The ones that come after you, they become the favorites later. But whatever food they like, that's really given to them. The utmost pampering and respect. So achar, things like this, special things that they get. So you have a special dish the first day, some kind of condiment like an achar or some kind of puri or something like that. So you have it one day. Oh, this is pretty nice. Next day you have it again, all right? Third day you have it. Fourth day, maybe they ran out or they didn't have it, that whatever it is, they don't have it. You look at it, you eat the meal, kuch halka hai, something feels empty at that moment though. Tripti is not there. Why? Before coming to that house, this habit of eating this wasn't there. It didn't really bother me of not having it. Having it for 3 or 4 days right in front of me, and I can ask for seconds, they offer it and everything, and then the 5th day it's not there, that creates some kind of irritation in the mind right there. I've become dependent on it. The impression in the mind has been created because I like it, strengthened because I've enjoyed that object. When it's not there, it's not that I resort to anger right away, but there's an uneasy feeling right there. That's what attachment and dependence does. If it can happen so easily with something so basic like food, then what to talk of the attachments to our loved ones, attachments to our passions, attachments to those strongest likes and aversions to those strongest dislikes. Those carry over from birth to birth. Those vasanas dictate how I use my equipment. Now, what is the equipment that I use? Body, mind, intellect, that very first layer there. Now, there's an objection right off the bat. Hariji, how can you call this equipment? This is what I am. My computer is equipment, my phone is equipment, my book is equipment. These are things that are beyond me that I use, therefore they're equipment. Body, mind, intellect is what I am, though. How can you classify it in the same way? Am I saying here that my body and my mind are equipment just as much as my computer is? Yes, that's exactly what we're saying right here. With what confidence? Even look at the way we speak. My arm hurts. My leg hurts. My face is ugly. We give these different monikers to different parts of ourselves. The moment I say my blank and then give some other classification there, I'm essentially saying it's not me, it's something else, something that I own. Same thing with my mind. No matter how much I say that I am angry, I am happy, the deeper meaning of what I'm saying there is my mind is happy, my mind is angry. That's what I'm essentially saying. When I say I know, or I don't know, or I am better than you, that goes back to the intellect there. The intellect is where there is clarity and lack of clarity. That also is equipment. So one logic is based on our common parlance, the way we speak. Where does the next logic come in then? And this is understanding of what Sanatana Dharma has on creation theory. This entire creation is made up of different combinations and permutations of 5 basic elements. Earth, water, fire, air, and space. These are the 5 elements in our Sanatana Dharma scientific view. Now, everything from this human body to all the objects we see are some preponderance of these 5 elements. That's what makes up this body even. Now you go deeper to that mental layer. Is the mind made of matter? By mind, I don't mean brain. Brain is still at the body level. It is a physical entity. The mind, then, the seat of emotions, is that made up of matter? Subtle matter is what it's made of. This same 5 elemental paradigm we have that makes up this gross world, when that's not grossified in the subtle layer, the same 5 elements make up that mind as well. Intellect, thought, is also matter then. Has to be. Another way we can look at this to prove this point is, and this is given in Gita later on, near the end of the chapters, when it comes to ahara, what I consume, different kinds of foods, isn't it true that based on the type of food I consume, it affects my mental well-being and my condition? Spicy food can make me agitated. Clean, good, sattvic food makes me sharp. And then on those days where you want to celebrate a lot or you're in great commiseration, shut up, PK, what does that do to the mind? Agitates it to no end. So this grossified elements then, when they are in contact with this body, that also affects the subtle elements that are in the mind. There is that connection that's clearly there. So if the mind is made of these elements, intellect is made of these elements, body is made of these elements, then they are all perishable. Nothing remains forever. These are the equipment that I use as I transact with the world. So the first layer we have is what the equipment is. The body, the mind, the intellect. Second layer of this chart is, what is my identity when I associate with this equipment? Based on the equipment I use, I can associate myself with an identity. If I'm carrying a tennis racket, I'm a tennis player. If I'm holding a violin, I'm a violinist. If I'm holding a gun, I could be a cop, I could be a burglar, I could be anything. So based on what equipment I use, my identity changes at that point. Similarly here, when I'm using the body as my equipment, I am a perceiver. What do I perceive? Objects. That is the sole purpose of this body then, in this framework. That as I act on in the world, using my tactile perception, stimuli that comes in through my 5 senses, I perceive objects. When I identify with the equipment of the mind, I am a feeler. What am I feeling? Emotions. Those various ups and downs that occur, because of what I'm perceiving with this body, that creates some kind of a change in the mind. I feel that change in the form of various emotions. And when I identify with the intellect, I am a thinker thinking thoughts based on the cognition of the body perceiving these objects. in tandem with those emotions that arise either from memory or recognition of what I'm perceiving, the intellect has thoughts, and that is the seat of decision making as well, directing the other two equipment. So this is the framework of how I transact with the world. Every single transaction that I have, every moment that I am waking or asleep, I can put into this framework of the BMI chart. That's the beauty of this structure. Now you can say, Hariji, structure is there. What is the purpose of it then? We can use this framework to analyze the most minute problems we have in our lives or the most macro crises and see where is the problem lying. Is it that my idea of perception of what's going on in the world of objects, is that gone astray? Is it that in my mind I'm creating my own reality with my own feelings, overpowering what the intellect really should see? Is that the issue? Or is it a lack of clarity that I'm not able to put what I perceive, not able to separate my emotions from facts? That's why my intellectual decisions have gone awry. I can analyze different situations that way. So after Bhagavan Krishna says that the one without desire, then he's the one with steady wisdom, it's that in that quest to eradicate my vasanas, that's the way I get to my true identity, these vasanas are cut by extinguishing these desires. That is verily the only way. That's what we see Bhagavad Gita all about in the early chapters. What else does Bhagavan Krishna say? Dukkheshvanudvignamanaha sukheshu vigatasprahaha. The wise person is the one whose mind is never shaken up by any kind of adversity. No matter what happens, the mind stays steady, and in times of great prosperity, that person does not go and seek things out, attached to objects. In times of great despair, they don't resort to sorrow either. That even-mindedness is there. Yuktaha, that's what integration is. This chart is all about integration. The body and what it perceives, is that in line with what the mind is feeling? Is that in line with the directions of the intellect? If that is the case, I am yuktaha, an integrated personality. And even in the corporate world, don't we go for integration, vertical integration in a company? It's where when you have a product line that you're selling, you want to diversify your products. If you're only selling one or two products, that's competition that comes and it kills your company. You have to sell more. So there was this company that they produced chips, potato chips. So one of their factories, I think outbreak of something happened there. And so all these chips started causing upset stomachs for their clients, all the people. So they have two options now. One is to discontinue making these chips and recall everything and lose a bunch of money on that, or do something else to save the situation. It's a very embarrassing situation for them. Everyone that eats their chips is now having stomach aches and diarrhea and vomiting and everything. This boss was a smart one though. He believed in vertical integration. So instead of shutting down the factory, he said, don't even clean the factory, keep making these chips as you are. They said, yeah, it's making people sick. He said, it's okay, keep producing them. The same company also introduced a diarrhea medicine as well. So you can buy both in tandem then. Buy the chips, you get sick, and this medicine also saves you. Who wins at the end of the day? That same company. That is vertical integration right there for the corporate world. I know, silly example, but that's what integration is. That everything is in line at the end of the day, the same person is the winner. Same thing here with the BMI. Where are these equipment working in tandem? If not, that's when integration goes. Now, when it comes to this person of steady wisdom, Nabhinandati nadveshti tasya prajna pratishtita is also what Bhagavan Sri Krishna says. That meeting with anything good or bad, there is no rejoicing, there is no sorrow. Now, that seems counterintuitive to living a life. So that means not showing any emotion at all, not being happy when things are happy, not being sad when things are sad. That's not what it's pointing at here. It's saying that at that moment, what is the appropriate emotive response that I have, that has to be kept in mind. Given what my position is, given what my responsibilities and duties are, what is my emotional response? When I was a child, I was deathly afraid of thunderstorms. I don't know what sparked it. My theory is when I was a kid, I must have been in a bad storm that really scared me. That must have sustained through time. So until I was like 10 years old or so, if I saw thunderclouds in the sky, I'd start crying. The response was really, really visceral right there. So even in my teenage years, it wasn't like crying as a response, but if there's a big storm, I'd feel a little bit of anxiety, tightness in the chest, just a little bit, shaking a little bit, that would happen. So one day I was at home, me, my mom, and my brother were watching TV, there's a tornado warning. So regular programming interrupted. So it's tornado time, November, December, around then. So we're watching the news, and then the weatherman comes on there. And when people who are in a position that you trust in these kind of moments, if they're calm, you're calm. When you're on an airplane and there's heavy turbulence, if the flight attendants are still smiling and they're still walking around and they look composed, you feel good, right? The moment the flight attendants freak out and that scares you even a lot more. You're like, okay, if they're freaking out, then I guess it's Govinda then. So I'm watching the news then, weatherman's up there. I'm 15 years old. And the weatherman says, this tornado right now, he has the Doppler radar behind him and everything. It's all green and red, right? Red means that it's time for cover. So his Doppler radar shows that this storm is now at Preston and DNT. He's about to say the signal of where it is, and he stops right away. He says, that's where my family lives. I have to call my family. He runs off the screen. We were just watching the news. I looked at my brother, and my first thought was, okay, I lived a good life, 15 good years. I guess this is it then. When the person who's the weatherman freaks out like that and says, I have to call my family, and then starts crying on air, what are we supposed to do, man? You're the one supposed to keep us secure in that moment. Tell us what to do. If you freak out, we freak out to the nth degree then. So that steadiness of not rejoicing, not being in sorrow, it's not saying don't have emotions. It's saying for what place I am in life and what duties I have to discharge, what are my appropriate responses? Like you think in our Balvihar classes, the teachers have to act like parents at certain times. They have to use their parent voice with the kids, getting loud when they have to, telling them to be quiet, things like this. It's not that they relish yelling at a child. It's not what it is. For that moment, that's what has to be evoked and used as an emotion, and then distanced from that as well. It's like what you do with your kids. And that anger does not sustain. You have to have a certain look on your face. You have to have a certain demeanor about you. After that moment, you're totally fine. But then when I'm so attached to situations going on, if I get in a heated argument in the morning, can that ruin the rest of my day? It totally can. That's why you hate getting bad news in the morning. It ruins the rest of your day. Get it later in the day, a shorter window is ruined. Earlier in the day, that's it. You're wiped out completely. So that really affects our mood, situations like that, because of that strong attachment then. But then look at the person of wisdom. Despite all the situations going on, they don't carry anything like baggage with them throughout their lives. Whatever emotion is used and evoked, it's dropped right at that moment. There's the famous story. Pujya Gurudev, near the end of his life, so this is in the early 90s, he was confined to a wheelchair. 20% of his heart was functional, and there just was not much energy in him, except there was energy in him. When it came to teaching and speaking to others, there was great energy, and he still showed that. Where apparently, one mission president in India somewhere had told a group of people that Gurudev would address them and come and speak at a function. He had created the posters and everything with Gurudev's name on there. One problem was Gurudev had never approved it. He had never confirmed he's going to go to that location to speak. This person just assumed, made the flyer, put his name on it, started passing it out, and he said, in a few days, there's 1,000 people expecting you to speak. So in front of everybody, Gurudev dressed that man down very eloquently, raised his voice, and just gave it to him. That, what is wrong with you? Is this how a mission member behaves? You know I have to give confirmation before you make the flyer. I have a conflict on that day. I did not confirm it. Here you are sending the flyer out to people, inconveniencing 1,000 people. What were you thinking? Screamed at him. Deservedly so. Saying that for your position and what you are, you're better than this. Is this how I've trained you? So he gave it to him. The very next moment, and I mean 2 seconds after that, literally 2 seconds after that, he turns his wheelchair. There's a child who's just won a Gita chanting competition, and he's come to see him. He picks up the child, is giggling and laughing with him and telling him stories right there, within 2 seconds. Not carrying a single vestige of the previous emotion that he had just had. Meaning, if this is equipment that I'm using, these feelings and these emotions that I'm dealing with right here, those are just tools then. Tools that I use, dispose of right away. Whether that be an object in the world, whether these emotions that are there that plague me, whether they're thoughts that I have, I dispose of them once they've served their purpose. And at a higher level, this very body, mind, and intellect, I dispose of once they've served their purpose as well. That is how I use this equipment. Now, Bhagavan also says, and we saw this today in the 4th chapter of our Gita chanting, it comes here in the 2nd chapter as well, that the person who is free from raga, bhaya, and krodha, that person is called a sage. Raga, attachment. Bhaya, fear. Krodha, anger. Again, let's go deeper into this objection. How can we say that fear is always the cause of anger? It's other things that are the cause of anger. I'm disrespected, that's why I'm angry. I don't have the outcomes I want despite working honestly, that's why I'm angry. Okay, let's look at those 2 instances then. I'm disrespected, that's why I'm angry. Where does fear come into this whole thing? Where the funniest thing I see, not funny for them, but funny for me, is those parents who at their companies are in big VP level positions or presidents, or especially in the military families, the dad is like a colonel or something like that. When they come home to their kids, they expect their kids to act like the people at their office act with them. Or at work, you go in there and you say, bring me a coffee. It's before you finish the words, the coffee's at your desk. You say, I need this report by tomorrow. 10 people will spend the night at the office, slaving away without seeing their families, working all night long. So you have that little report that you glance at once and put it aside. You have that kind of respect there. And it may be well-earned as well. You come home and with your teenage son, you want to have that same kind of command. Are you going to get it? There's no way you're going to get it. He's going to look at you and say, okay, and walk away. That's all. So that expectation and attachment to this is how I'm supposed to be seen is there. Anger will come when it's not given that respect. Where is fear in there then? The fear is my own position being diminished. What does that hold for the future? That fear is what subtly sets in. And when that fear resides in the heart and gets more and more and more strengthened every time I'm so-called disrespected, anger is the only byproduct. So being disrespected, fear is a huge factor there. Now, I've worked honestly, looking for the right outcomes. Those outcomes aren't coming. That makes me angry. Fear has nothing to do with it. Fear is a factor there as well. If I've worked honestly, what I truly believe in my mind is that if I do the right thing, good things will happen to me. At that basic level, if I do the right thing, good things will happen. When that doesn't happen, I have that fear of losing Shraddha in myself at that point. Shraddha in the system around me. Shraddha in the way the universe works. Shraddha in that Bhagavan even at that point. That's the fear that sets in. Fear plays a major factor. So if we look at the Upanishads, Taittiriya Upanishad for example, one guarantee that's given by learning this knowledge is coming in a section called Abhaya Pratishtha. Abhaya meaning fearlessness. Fearlessness is guaranteed for the one who has attained this wisdom. How is that fearlessness gained? It's not that they can just go on, head into any situation, head on, and not have any fear at all and vanquish whatever comes about. That's not the situation here. It's that because that attachment is not with this equipment of body, mind, and intellect, there is no attachment to the byproducts of them. Therefore, emotions don't give me fear. What I'm perceiving provides me no fear. Clarity or lack of clarity does not give me fear either. That attachment with these equipment is completely cut. Fear has no place to rise. One of our chicks came up with something beautiful. The phrase, what does fear stand for? Face everything and rise is what fear stands for, they say. That should be the attitude then when fear is there. So Bhagavan Krishna goes through this amazing example here of talking about why the senses have to be restrained now. That's his next place he goes to, where he gives an entire process of that person who has subscribed to self-control as a way to get rid of desires. Now, self-control is a funny thing. Realization and looking for these markers in someone is a funny thing as well. Because what was Arjuna's original question that we looked at today? How does this wise person speak? How do they walk? How do they sit? How do they generally conduct themselves? He's looking for specific markers. Now this whole time, Bhagavan Krishna has gone on about how they have no desires, no this, no that. He's not really answering Arjuna's question specifically here, because Arjuna's question is faulty in itself. To see a person as realized or not, realization is not incumbent upon how they act transactionally. It's not that they have to wear a certain amount of malas or a certain type of clothing or anything. That has nothing to do with realization. Realization is only, do I have knowledge of my true identity? It's a zero-sum game. It's a yes or a no. There's no maybe or I'm 70% realized, no such thing. Either realized or not. Physically, there are no markers for it. Personality-wise, and through the work they do, that is also not a marker for realization. Who are the two gurus of our Puja Gurudev? Diksha Guru was Puja Swami Shivananji. Siksha Guru was Puja Swami Tapovana Maharaj. These two gurus are the reason why we have this lineage today. Now, these two masters could not be more different from each other. Swami Shivananji was a former doctor who actually ran a dispensary in Rishikesh for all of the sadhus who were there. He was actively engaged in karma by writing, by publishing books, pamphlets, all of this. Juxtapose that with Puja Swami Tapovanji Maharaj, who had this one veranda hut in Uttarkashi, that's where he was. And from there, when it got, the summer months, he'd go to Gangotri, even more remote, because he said too many people would come to Uttarkashi. That's how remote he wanted to be. We're just reveling in this knowledge, one cloth that he wore, and that's it. Now, Gurudev learned from both of them. So the doubt can come up, how can they both be realized they live such different lives? And how do we see that in action then? When Puja Gurudev had this idea of, inspired by this knowledge, I have to go teach this knowledge to the people. Swami Shivananji said, go roar like Vivekananda. I wish there were 1,000 of you to go do this. This is the need of the hour. Go teach the people this knowledge. Very excitedly he said that. And Gurudev went to Swami Tapovanji Maharaj. He said, I want to teach this knowledge to the people. Tapovanji Maharaj said, why? You had to come all the way to the Himalayas to learn this knowledge. No one cares about this stuff. Take it from me, the people do not care about this knowledge. They'll fall asleep in lectures that they do not care about this. There's no purpose in going out there. You've learned all of this knowledge. You've removed yourself from the hubbub of life. Sit here and just revel in this knowledge. Why do you want to go back in there? It's like being in a pigsty. Like dirt and grime and everything rolling around in there. You finally come out. You discover water. You take a shower, a nice hot bath. You're clean. You don't want to stay there. Why are you jumping back into that muck? Gurudev said, no, I have to do this. So, two different personalities completely, but they both had this knowledge deeply ingrained in them. What I mean to say is, someone's outer personality does not dictate whether they are realized or not. And the reason I'm very emphatically saying this is, in today's world, just like we have singers that go through their world tours in the summertime, like that, we have many Mahatmas who come through the same way. All right? So it turns into a game of who is better than whom. This organization's person, he can manifest things out of bags. Oh, he must be great. This person, he can tell your future. This person can do this. These may be siddhis. I'm not saying they don't have these type of skills. Siddhis can be there. That is not a marker for realization. And again, I make this point time and again. If any so-called guru out there claims to be an avatar of Bhagavan or claims to be some divine being or something, get up and run away as fast as you can. That is not Hinduism. Any kind of avatar, divine being, it's said that in Shastra, that's why we believe it. Anyone who is a guru who says, I am God, worship me, I'm an avatar, that is not the case. Any followers that say that also, that is not the case. You'll never hear in his lectures or his writings or anything, Puja Gurudev saying he's an avatar. Never. That is not what the Hindu Sampradaya is at all. So a personal realization then is not some outer show of this is how they behave, therefore they're realized. It's about having that knowledge, not being encased in this BMI and being attached. Has to do completely with knowledge. So what's that process, though, that Bhagavan Krishna warns us about? Because at a certain point in my sadhana, I can come to this point where I feel like I am such a good person. Man, these people around me get angry and everything. I'm such a nice guy. My goodness, all of them make mistakes. They're fighting with their kids or they're not doing well at work because they can't stay focused. I'm doing so well. That feeling can come at a certain point then. I haven't had a carb in 3 years. My resting heart rate is this because I'm so fit. The body level, these are things that we can brag about. Everyone else has to buy new pants every year. I still wore what I wore 10 years ago because I'm still the same size. Body arrogance is there. There's that mental arrogance as well. That, these people are always stressed out about something. I have no stresses at all because I manage my life so well. My time management, kid management, spouse management, everything is going so well. I'm just really doing it all really well. Then there's the intellectual arrogance. If I say something, so many people are here listening to me. Some of them even stay awake when I'm speaking for so long. I must be such a great person. Intellectual arrogance can really creep in as well. It's at this point then, Bhagavan warns what? Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. For that person who believes that they have good self-control, dhyayataha, all it takes is to ruminate on an object, and you see how I spiral down at that point. Dhyayato vishayan. Vishayan means the world of objects all around me. Pumsaha. Pumsaha is a very interesting word. So the person who is devolving with attachment to an object, that's not some ordinary person like you and me. He's talking about that person who for years has cultivated this self-control, has integrated this body, mind, and intellect, is efficiently using the world of objects, emotions, and thoughts. That person falls for an object. From those heights, they fall. And the fall is very hard, as you'll see here. Because what's the difference between falling out of a second-story window and falling out of a 10th-story window? What's the difference? The difference is in the sound. When you fall from a second-story window, this is what it sounds like. Ah! When you fall from a 10th-story window, what does it sound like? Ah! That's the difference right there. The higher we go, much harder we fall. So what are these two shlokas here? Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bhijayate. From that thinking of that object or that situation or that person, attachment for it arises. From that attachment, desire is what's born from there. Okay, I'm thinking about it so much, I want this thing, there's a desire for it. Not having it then, not having enough of it, not having it the way I want it, anger is what comes from that. Then what does that anger lead to? Krodhad bhavati sammohaha, sammohat smriti vibhramaha, smriti bhramshad buddhinashaha, buddhinashat pranashyati. That anger, krodha, leads to moha, delusion, where I create my own reality at that point. Things that people have not said to me, I invent them. Things that have not even happened yet, I have an anxiety for them. I assume they've already happened and I act accordingly. Delusion can be deep. From that delusion, moha, comes smriti vibhramaha, loss of memory. All that I've learned in satsang, those value systems that I've incurred, everything that I've worked towards, all memory of that starts slipping away. Because intelligence is what? Right knowledge coming to me at the right time. That completely goes away. From that loss of memory then, buddhinashaha. Discretion completely goes to the wind. What is right? What is wrong? What is beneficial? What's adverse? There is no knowledge of any of this. I just act with reckless abandon. Buddhinashaha, then pranashyati. The person perishes. Now, this was always an odd jump to me. That, okay, I'm not thinking straight, so I die right away. That must be insane right there. I remember these two shlokas are really dear to me because we learned this in 6th grade. Or no, 5th grade actually. When it comes to values and keys to success, these two shlokas our 5th graders learn. So that year, what we do in class, I had to speak on these two. So I remember the example I gave, it was right on this stage here, I was 10 years old. The example I gave was a video game. That you get attached to a video game, want your parents to buy it for you. They don't buy it for you, and so you start getting angry. After that, delusion sets in, you don't know what's right anymore. You loss of memory, you forget all the right things to do, then your intellect takes a dive, and then you perish, is how I ended the speech. So Swamiji said, okay, so no video game, so you perish, huh? That's what he said from the stage right here. So perishing here does not mean that the body drops. Thank God, or none of us would be around right now, for sure. Perishes here means when a person has locked that intellectual strength and capability, they might as well be dead. This body may be there. Mind may be functioning. When that decision-making capability is shattered, though, there is no way a person can pick themselves up. Verily they are gone. There is no progress. There is no evolution. It's a very dire circumstance to be in. That's the seriousness given here. So at the end of this 2nd chapter, we can all take a deep breath at this point. We've gone through chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita for the past 3 weeks, and I've given you small doses. I haven't gone in depth into it because chapter 2 reads as a table of contents. This section of Sthita Prajna Lakshana, it comes in later in 12th chapter, in 13th chapter, and 18th chapter again. The idea of Karma Yoga comes in the 3rd chapter, the next one. The idea of how useful this knowledge is, we find that in the 4th chapter. We find the idea of Tyaga, giving up things through self-control, Karma Sannyasa, that comes in the 5th chapter. When it comes to that Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, That single pointed focus, that is elaborated upon in the 6th chapter. When Bhagavan Krishna talks about having that trust in him, 7th chapter, nature of that Ishvara is given. So you see in the few chapters that we have coming up, these ideas are expanded upon even more, and we get more insights there. So the 2nd chapter is a big one, a primer to the rest of that Gita. Now, this is our framework going forward. Really excited to finally reveal this today. Where for 40 years, Pujya Gurudev, when it came to training this mind, having an optimal intellect, having this body function properly with the world outside, this is the framework that was used. We'll get acquainted with this in so many different ways. So with that, I'll see you on the live stream next week. Thank you so much for being here. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.